thanks for having me. First of all, where's Oriana Paul? Scream. There's Oriana. Get out here and stand. So we had a separate applause for Oriana Paul. You know, the Tea Party sometimes gets beat up, but whenever I think of the Tea Party, there are wonderful other Tea Party here today. I think of Oriana Paul. So, can you wave, Oriana? Okay. Now, Oriana told me the theme of today has to be 2012 and why we have to win. And there are a variety of things to talk about when we talk about 2012. Okay, we know we have to win. We know it's now or never for the country. I think some of the people following me, Ron Johnson, the greatest senator in the United States, the greatest, and I am a negative sort of guy, I don't say that lightly, but the greatest senator in the United States is going to talk about the danger of our debt, and we all know that 43% of every dollar spent federally today is borrowed. I mean, think about that, 43%. Our country's on the verge of collapse. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about another crisis that I think is just as great. Because in addition to getting our candidates in here, we have to demand conservatism and constitutionalism from our candidates once they get in office, right? Yeah. When we work our butts off here in 2012, we cannot have a repeat of 2000 to 2006 when George Bush and the liberal Republicans, ran up the debt. There are a variety of issues we have to demand that they deal with. But the issue I'm going to talk about today is welfare and the breakdown of the family. Let's not forget, our schools don't tell people enough about communism. Let's not forget that one of the goals of communism, as laid out by Karl Marx, was the destruction of the family, right? And why do communists want to get rid of the family? And what can our politicians do to turn things around? The communists and the left likes to get rid of the family because it's independent, okay? A family is an independent unit in which the parents support the children and don't rely on the government. So that's the first thing the left hates about the family. The next thing, most people learn about God from their parents, okay? And because the left hates God and wants to destroy Christianity, they don't like the family. And secondly, when you go home at night, when the children go home with their parents can instill their values of them. And the left hates the idea of somebody independent instilling values in the next generation. That, by the way, is why the government keeps wanting more 4-year-old kindergarten and 3-year-old kindergarten and wants everybody to go to college and graduate school. They want everybody forever learning at the knee of government. Now, what I'm going to talk about, and I've handed a bunch of these out here today, and if you don't, you can get one up here afterwards, is the fact that right now the left is succeeding in destroying the family. Okay? How are they succeeding? Now understand, I like all children, okay? I've been outside abortion clinics. Whenever a woman decides to have a child, that's a blessing to God. But last year in the United States, 41% of the children were born without a mother and a father. Now, I'm reluctant to talk about that because I know a lot of families in that position and a lot of wonderful gals who I think the world of in that position. But let's not kid ourselves. America cannot continue to survive if 41% of the children in our society are born without a mother and a father. And that's going up, folks. Unless we do something to turn that ship around, that number is going to be 50% or 60% in a few years. Okay? Now, why is that happening? I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's happening. It's happening because the government keeps taking money from everybody else to prop up that unit and materially put that unit in a better position than many people, than many young gals who decide to get married. What I've handed out here, and some of you have it, I wasn't able to get to all of you, is I said let's take a single gal who's making $15,000 a year, so she's either working for minimum wage or part-time, and she's got 2 kids. What does the government give that young gal for having her 2 kids and making 15 grand a year? The first thing the government does is they say, we'll give you rental assistance. There's a waiting list, but if you get off the waiting list, our gal gets about $630 a month in rental assistance. Okay, there are a lot of apartments around there that go for less than, not a lot, but some will go less for $630 a month. And by the way, that gal would get a larger amount if she wasn't working at all. But we decided to be realistic here, $15,000 a year. The next thing, because my gal has a 3-year-old child, she gets free daycare of $9,500 a year. That's her bonus for being a single gal with 2 kids. Then there's something called the Earned Income Credit, which Scott Walker just peeled down just a tiny bit and the liberals went nuts. And if you make $15,000 a year and have 2 kids, and you with your tax return file a state and federal return, you get a special refund of $5,500 a year. Think about that. I bet most of you don't even know that. If you're a single mom making 15 grand a year, the government will give you a check when you file your tax return on April 15th of $5,500. You then, of course, get food stamps. Food stamps totaling about $5,500 a year as well. You then get free medical care, Badger Care. You get energy assistance of about $700 a year. If you want to go to college, unlike everybody else who's going to graduate in debt out of their mind, and by the way, college is overrated, that's another thing. But by the way, if you decide to go to college, because we're all told we have to go to college, unlike your sisters or siblings or friends, you get free college because you're considered to be poor. There are other benefits like WIC and other things, but at the end, I've just rattled off $38,000 worth of tax-free benefits. And if that gal gets married, she loses all $38,000 of those benefits.
Cut the benefits!
Now, when they do that, the government is sending a very clear message. It's no big deal. I used to, when I started on this, felt the social services establishment didn't know what they were doing. But over time, I've even become a little bit more cynical and think a lot of those social workers are outright in favor of destroying the family, and they want to make this the norm of society. So what we have to do, and some guy back here hit the nail on the head, we've got to begin to peel back these benefits. You talk to an average girl, average gal, working a checkout, working at Pick and Save or Woodman's or whatever, and they will tell you that the food that's purchased by somebody on food stamps or food share is better than the food that she can afford for herself. I get tired of, and I run into people who tell me that the apartment or the house that they got on Section 8 is better than the apartment or the house that they would get if they're not on Section 8 housing. Badger Care is a plan which is superior as far as co-pays or deductibles or benefits, superior to what the average guy gets who works in the private sector right now. Right down the line, the government is saying in the short term materially, you are going to be better off if you take this route. And every time somebody hands out one of these benefits, they are sending that message that this is no big deal and that should become the norm. I repeat again and again, I'll pick one quick anecdote before I get my 9 minutes done here. I gave this talk a while back in Green Bay, and there was a gal who was a bartender off to the side. She was a cute gal, and I always figured, you know, this type of crowd agrees with me usually. But I wondered what this average 25, 27-year-old gal would think. And I asked her, you heard my speech, what do you think? You know what she said? She said, well, me and my husband got married before I had a child, but none of my friends are getting married, they get free college. Well, I'll tell you, our country's on the verge of collapse, because obviously this was a nice gal and she had nice friends, but the leadership class in this country had sent a clear message to all these nice, cute, middle-class girls of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Don't get married or you don't get free college. Now, I would demand, as people run around here and run for Congress and run for U.S. Senator, whatever, say, look at folks, 41% of the kids last year were born out of wedlock. And it's because they're getting a lot of benefits that put them better, certainly way better off than if they had a husband, and better off than a lot of their siblings or friends that don't have a husband. What are you going to do to change it and insist on it? Now, thanks for being here. 2012, it's up against the wall, America. There's no turning back. If we lose this one, our country is lost. But I'm just mentioning one issue today that you don't hear any of the other politicians talking about, that I want you to demand action from them and say, like I said, 41% of the kids out of wedlock now. What are you going to do to make sure it's not 51% in 10 years? Thanks for having me, Oriana.